Every story leaves something behind. A whisper. A shadow. A question that was never answered. Here, we dig through the forgotten files, the unsolved mysteries, the chilling true crimes, and the horrors people wish had stayed buried. From haunted legends to real-life nightmares, every tale is pulled straight from the horror archives. So turn down the lights, put on your headphones, and step carefully. Because once a story enters the horror archives, it never truly leaves. Tonight we have 3 stories about abandoned houses. Places people went into, and didn't come out of the same. Our first story was sent in by a listener who explored an old colonial house with a friend one summer. What they found on the second floor suggests someone had been watching visitors to that house for a very long time. The wallpaper was peeling in strips that curled toward the ceiling, not toward the floor. I didn't notice that detail until later, but when I did, it was the first thing that told me something about this house was fundamentally wrong. I was 19, home from college for the summer, and my friend Derek had been obsessing over this abandoned house on Morrow Lane for weeks. It sat about a quarter mile off the road at the end of a gravel driveway that had mostly been swallowed by weeds. The place had been empty since at least the early 90s. The county records said the last owner just stopped paying taxes 1 year and never came back. No forwarding address. No death certificate on file. They just vanished. We went on a Tuesday afternoon. Broad daylight. I remember the air being heavy and still, the kind of humid July heat that makes everything feel muffled. The house was a 2-story colonial, white paint flaked down to gray wood. The front porch had partially collapsed on the left side, so we went in through a side door that was already hanging open. The smell hit us first. Not rot exactly. More like old, wet fabric. Like a closet that hadn't been opened in decades. The ground floor was mostly empty. A few pieces of furniture covered in plastic sheeting. A kitchen with an ancient refrigerator still standing with its door open. There were newspapers on the counter dated March 1993. Derek was filming everything on his phone. I was just looking around, trying to shake this low-level unease I couldn't explain. Then I noticed the wallpaper. In the hallway leading to the stairs, the wallpaper was a faded floral pattern, yellow and green. And it was peeling upward. Every strip, every loose edge, curling up toward the ceiling as if gravity had reversed just for the walls. I pointed it out to Derek and he shrugged, said it was probably just how old paste dried. But it wasn't just one wall. It was every wall in the hallway. Every strip. All reaching up. We went upstairs. The stairs groaned but held. There were 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. The first bedroom had a mattress on the floor with a sleeping bag on it. Not old and decayed. Relatively clean. Recent. There was a gallon jug of water next to it, half full, and a plastic bag from a gas station with chip wrappers inside. Someone was living here. Derek and I looked at each other, and without saying a word, we both knew we should leave. But before we turned around, I glanced into the second bedroom. The door was mostly closed, open just a crack. Through the crack I could see the far wall, and on that wall, someone had taped up photographs. Dozens of them. I pushed the door open a few more inches. The photographs were all of the same house. This house. But taken from outside. From the road. From the driveway. And in several of them, there were people visible. Walking up the driveway. Standing on the porch. Looking through the windows. People like us. Explorers. Trespassers. Some of the photos had dates written on them in marker. They spanned years. 2014, 2017. 2019, 2023. Someone had been watching and documenting every single person who came to this house. I grabbed Derek's arm and we left. Fast. Down the stairs, out the side door, through the weeds, back to the car. We didn't run, but we moved with purpose. As I was getting into the passenger seat, I looked back at the house one last time. There was a curtain in the third bedroom window. The one we hadn't gone into. And it moved. Just slightly. Just enough. I never went back. But a few weeks later I was looking at the photos Derek had taken, and in one of them, the one he snapped to the hallway with the wallpaper, there's a shadow on the floor near the base of the stairs. It's not mine. It's not Derek's. We were both standing behind the camera. Someone else was on that floor with us. That one never sits right with me. The idea that someone was there the entire time, watching, documenting, but the next story is worse. Much worse. This one was sent in by an urban explorer from Ohio. He and a friend found something in a farmhouse basement that shouldn't have been there. When they went back for proof, it was gone. The details in this one are hard to shake. The basement light was on when we pulled up, and the house hadn't had electricity since 2008. That should have been enough to make us turn around. It wasn't. This was October, 2 years ago. I was 24, and I'd gotten into urban exploration as a hobby. Nothing extreme. Mostly old factories and schools. My buddy Chris and I had found this place through a forum post. Someone had listed it as a farmhouse outside of Ridgeway, Ohio, abandoned after a family dispute over the estate. No one had claimed it. No one maintained it. It just sat there on 11 acres of dead farmland, rotting. We got there around 8 at night. The sun had just gone down, and the sky was that deep blue-black that makes everything on the ground look flat, like a cardboard cutout. The house was set way back from the county road. No neighbors for at least a mile in either direction. The wind was cutting through the cornfield stubble and making this low whistling sound that didn't stop the entire time we were there. The house was a simple 2-story farmhouse. White wood siding gone gray. A wraparound porch with half the railing missing. Most of the windows were broken. And from the right side of the house, from a small rectangular window at ground level, there was a faint yellowish glow coming from the basement. Chris said it was probably kids with a lantern. Squatters. Maybe someone had rigged a generator. I didn't love any of those explanations, but we'd driven 2 hours to get there, so we went in. The front door was unlocked. Not broken open, unlocked. The knob turned smoothly. Inside, the house smelled like damp earth and something chemical I couldn't place. Almost like bleach but sweeter. The living room had been stripped. No furniture. Just bare floors with water stains and a stone fireplace with a black interior. We swept our flashlights through the kitchen and a small back room that might have been a study. Nothing unusual except that the house was remarkably clean for being abandoned for over 15 years. No graffiti. No beer cans. No sign that anyone had partied here or trashed the place. That struck me as odd. The door to the basement was in the kitchen. A plain wooden door with a sliding bolt lock on the outside. The bolt was in the unlocked position. I opened the door and the smell hit me. That chemical sweetness, 10 times stronger. And the light was definitely there, coming from somewhere at the bottom of the stairs. A warm, steady glow. Not flickering like a candle. Steady like a bulb. Chris went down first. I followed. The stairs were solid concrete, which was unusual for a house that old. The basement was unfinished. Dirt floor. Stone foundation walls. And against the far wall, someone had set up a work area. There was a long folding table. On the table were mason jars. Maybe 30 of them, lined up neatly. Each one was filled with a cloudy liquid and sealed. Behind the jars, mounted on the wall, was a battery-powered LED shop light. That was the glow we'd seen from outside. Chris walked up to the table and shone his flashlight on the jars. Inside the liquid, in each jar, there were objects. Small objects. I stepped closer and my stomach dropped. They were teeth. Each jar contained teeth. Not a random collection. Each jar seemed to hold a full set. Uppers and lowers, arranged in a rough arch at the bottom of the jar, as if someone had carefully placed them to mimic the shape of a mouth. I counted the jars. 32. Chris was already backing toward the stairs. I was right behind him. But as I turned, my flashlight swept across the wall to the left of the stairs, and I saw something I hadn't noticed coming down. There were tally marks scratched into the stone. Hundreds of them. Grouped in sets of 5. And next to the tally marks, written in what looked like black marker, were 2 words. Not yet. We left. We drove straight to the county sheriff's office and told them what we'd found. They took a report. They said they'd check it out. I called back a week later to follow up. The deputy I spoke to said they'd gone to the property and found the house empty. No table. No jars. No shop light. He said the basement was just a dirt floor cellar with nothing in it. He asked me if I was sure I had the right house. I was sure. I had photos on my phone. The jars. The teeth. The tally marks. But when I pulled up my photos, every image from inside the basement was corrupted. Just black frames. Every single one. The exterior shots were fine. The upstairs shots were fine. But every photo from that basement was gone. Chris's photos were the same. 32 jars. That number stays with me. Our last story tonight is the one that disturbed me the most when I first read it. It was submitted by a building contractor from Vermont who was hired to assess an old house for demolition. What he found in the attic doesn't have an explanation. And the history of the house only makes it worse. The door was warm. That's the part one keep coming back to. Every surface in that house was freezing cold, but that door was warm to the touch, like something behind it was generating heat. This happened in January of last year. I'm a contractor by trade, and a colleague of mine had been hired to assess an abandoned property in rural Vermont for potential demolition. The house had been tied up in legal disputes for almost 20 years after the owner, a man named Harold Steen, died without a will. No family came forward. The state finally seized the property and wanted an estimate for teardown. My colleague asked me to come along because the house was large, a 4-bedroom Victorian, and he wanted a second set of eyes on the structural integrity. We drove up on a Wednesday morning. The temperature was around 12 degrees. The house sat at the end of a long dirt road that hadn't been plowed, so we had to walk the last quarter mile through 6 inches of snow. The trees were bare and close together, and the house appeared suddenly, like it had been hiding. It was massive. 3 stories if you counted the attic. Dark wood exterior, almost black from years of weather damage. Every window on the ground floor had been boarded up from the inside. My colleague, Paul, had the key from the county. We entered through the front door. The house was dark and silent. Our breath came out in clouds. The interior was in rough shape. Water damage on every ceiling. Floors warped and buckled. Plaster falling off the walls in chunks. But the bones were solid. The framing was old-growth timber, dense and hard. We spent about an hour going room by room on the first floor, taking measurements and photos. Standard assessment work. The second floor was more of the same. Decay. Neglect. A few pieces of furniture left behind. A rocking chair in one bedroom that was positioned facing the corner of the room, not the window, not the door, just the corner. Then we went to the attic. The attic access was through a narrow door at the end of the second floor hallway. Paul opened it, and the staircase behind it was steep and dark. We went up single file. The attic was one large open space. Exposed rafters. A few cardboard boxes stacked against one wall. And at the far end, where the roof sloped down to meet the floor, someone had built a room. Not a partition. Not a curtain. A room. Framed with 2x4s. Drywalled. Taped and mud. Painted. It had a door. A real interior door, white, with a brushed nickel handle. It looked brand new. It looked like someone had built a finished, modern room inside the attic of a decaying Victorian house. Paul and I just stared at it. It made no sense. The rest of the house was falling apart, and here was this pristine constructed space. I walked up to it and put my hand on the door. It was warm. Not slightly warm. Noticeably warm. Like the other side was heated. In a house with no electricity, no gas, no running utilities of any kind. In 12-degree weather. The door was warm. Paul told me to open it. I turned the handle. It was locked. Not from our side. There was no lock on our side. It was locked or held from the inside. I knocked. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. I knocked 3 times. Nothing happened for about 5 seconds. Then, from behind the door, there were 3 knocks back. Same rhythm. Same spacing. Like a mirror of what I'd done. Paul grabbed my shoulder and pulled me back. We stood there staring at the door. I could hear my own heartbeat. The attic was dead silent. Then we heard something else. Breathing. Slow and deep, from behind the door. Not panicked. Not hiding. Just, present. Like whoever or whatever was in there had been breathing like that the whole time and we were only now close enough to hear it. Paul said we needed to leave. I agreed. We backed toward the attic stairs, neither of us willing to turn away from that door. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard the handle click. Not turn all the way. Just click. Like someone on the other side had rested their hand on it. We descended fast. Down the attic stairs, down the second-floor hallway, down the main staircase, out the front door. We didn't stop until we were back at the truck. Paul called the county office and told them the property had a squatter. They sent someone out the following day. The report came back that the attic was empty. No constructed room. No drywall. No door. Just an open attic with some old boxes. I went back to the county assessor's office myself and asked to see the original property file on Harold Steen. The clerk pulled it up and showed me the death certificate. Cause of death was listed as exposure. He'd been found in the house. In the attic. The note said he was sitting in a chair facing a wall at the far end of the attic where the roof met the floor. In the exact spot where I had touched that door. The clerk also mentioned something that wasn't in the official file but had been passed around the office for years. When they'd found Harold Steen, his hands were pressed flat against the wall. Both palms. Like he was feeling for warmth on the other side. I think about that door every single day. I think about what would have happened if it had opened. And some nights, when my house gets really quiet, I swear I can hear 3 slow knocks coming from a wall that has nothing behind it. And that's where tonight's file closes, but the archives are far from empty. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and join us as we uncover more horrors, mysteries, and true crimes hidden in the horror archives. Until next time. Keep the lights low, keep listening, because you never know what story we'll uncover next.